like, I'm going to claim a dragon, I'm going to marry my sister, I'm a capital T Targaryen. Yeah,
even though it's incest, we still wanted to see more.
Yeah. We want the details.
I'm okay with seeing a little bit less. I'm okay with just...
So hi everyone, and welcome back to We Need to Talk About, a weekly video series where Digital Spy talks about the biggest shows in the world. And this week, that of course is House of the Dragon, episode 7. So, I'm your host, David Opie, and this week I am joined by Ali.
Hello.
And Emma.
Hiya.
And Janet.
Hi guys.
Before we get started, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you get these videos as soon as they come out. And now, this week, as usual, each of my guests has brought some key talking points from the episode. And we say this a lot, probably every week, but this episode in particular, there is so much we need to talk about. So, let's get started. First of all, I'm thinking, well, towards the end of the episode, it gets very meaty. People lose their eyeballs meaty. So let's dig into Aemon's eye and the big fallout from that. Who wants to get started? Because there's a lot to say, of course.
I'm going to kick this off just because I was incredibly naive. And, I thought, I'm watching my fun dragon show. And I kind of forgot it was in the universe of Game of Thrones. So, Aemond, young Aemond, obviously... I was feeling really bad for him after the last episode. He's really badly bullied by his brother and his cousins, or I think his nephews. I don't know. This family's incest. But yeah, I was feeling really bad for him. And then we see in this episode, we have the funeral and everyone's kind of giving looks and he's being very cautious and paying attention to everything that's going on. So I was like, right, this is your time, Aemond, pay attention, be very clever. And of course, at the fall of night, he sneaks off to go and steal Vhagar the dragon, or claim him, I guess. And I was rooting for him so much. I don't know about you guys, but I was like, yes, you go, Aemond, you get your dragon. And we have this spectacular scene, which was very Daenerys-esque, wasn't it? With loads of dragon action. This great flying scene, and finally someone screaming on a dragon, which I think is what we needed. But then things take a bit of a turn, and suddenly I was maybe not rooting for Aemond so much.
It's
first
funny.
of all, how did you guys feel about that scene of him getting the dragon?
I was not a fan. I'll be honest. I was not rooting for him at all.
Same.
He stole his...
He's a snotty little kid.
Right? His cousin, nephew, I don't know, whatever. Cousin? What is she? Anyway, she just lost her mom. She doesn't have a dragon herself. She technically is in line to at least try to claim Vhagar, and he's like, no way. I'm getting in there first. Who are you? Can you calm down, please? Can you have a moment with yourself? I wasn't a fan.
Yeah, last week I made 2 claims last week. One of which was that Aemond had horrendous Rancid vibes, and I was bang on with that. I knew it from day. As soon as we met him with his little pig, I was like, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's being bullied." I was like, "No, this kid's got issues." And then, but I fully thought that Vhagar was going to go to Helena's daughter. It felt like that was the setup. And yeah, so when I saw him at first when I saw him clambering over the hill, I was like, is he like spying on Rhaenyra and Damon? Because obviously that scene's beginning to come.
And I was like, he's
creepy.
He's not going to see anything even if he wants to. It's so dark, but let's get into that later.
I thought this was going to be like a Bran Stark scene, like from series 1 of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Once I got over the fact that he's claiming Vhagar and it's not really his, which was a cool moment, right? Like he wakes Vhagar up, she kind of like growls and opens her mouth, and like you can see the fire. But I thought the actual like flying moment was cool. It was like the first big dragon ride moment we've had in the show in a couple of episodes, I think, or certainly it feels that way. And yeah, it was definitely like a big epic scene. It was very cool to kind of get that sense of like the scale from Vhagar as a character in the show. Like during the funeral, there's some really cool moments where Aemond is like looking off to the side, and you see like the shadow of Vhagar like duck behind a cloud, or they hear him like they hear her like growling and stuff in the background. So you could see that like she was present in the episode before we saw her.
It's nice that we're actually
really
getting
cool.
that emotion from the dragons in a way that we don't get a lot from in House of Dragons at the moment. But I thought that scene was also very, very telling about Aemon himself, because it's funny how Aegon is the one in line for the throne. Well, they think he should be the one who's in line for the throne. He's supposed to be the next heir. And yet he is so dispassionate, and he doesn't have any kind of leadership vibes or any kind of like ambitions. But
he's not
Aemon
interested, right? He doesn't seem interested in it.
But Aemon is the one with all the ambition, and I wonder if it's because he's second in line. Well, according to Alicent, second in line, also doesn't have a dragon, so he feels like he has a lot to prove. He feels like he has a lot to prove. Yeah. So
there was a lot of him kind of plotting and sort of lurking in the background, just watching what everyone else is doing and taking that in.
During the funeral scene, there's that weird moment where they're like watching my absolute queen Helena play with her bugs, and Aemon's like, but Aemon's basically like, if I was told to marry her, I'd marry my sister. Basically, he's like, I would do what it takes to be a Targaryen. Like, he's, like you said, Janet, he's willing to put it all out on the line, like there and then. Aegon's like getting pissed and falling down the stairs. And Aemon's like, I'm going to claim a dragon, I'm going to marry my sister, I'm a capital T Targaryen. So the scene ends, we see him claim Vhagar. The roars of Vhagar wake everyone in the castle up. Laena and Daemon's daughters wake up. And they go wake up Jace. They come down to see who's stolen Vhagar, and they confront Aemond. And then, there's this like really tense, grim fight scene where Aemond is basically like, he calls Rhaenyra's sons bastards. He... basically, it's like, your mum's dead, so I can claim dragon if I want to. He's
very,
like, they all fight.
Just sharp and toxic and vicious. He's coming for
it. And it turns into like a really violent tussle, which I think was quite shocking to see. And like, there's that scene where they're all kicking him on the ground, and he kicks Lucerys, and obviously he's holding the rock up, going to like knock him over the head, and it all escalates until eventually he gets stabbed, and then he doesn't get stabbed, his face gets kind of slashed, and he loses the eye. And that obviously sets off this chain of events.
Honestly. I was like, pluck it right out, pluck it, show it to him, boom.
This was very, because I was watching it and I was like, this is a lot. I mean, we're not seeing anything I mean, he did lose an eye, so I can't say we're not seeing anything massively violent, because we did. But it still felt overwhelmingly much, shall we say.
Yeah. I think it was interesting because it is just kind of like shows the brutality and the reality of this world that they're living in. And, you know, we as viewers are seeing all of these kids as children, but they're witnessing horrific things all the time. They're hearing their parents talking about power and how they want to bump someone off or elbow someone off the Iron Throne. And like, they're listening and they're influenced by all of this. And this is really the first time that we're seeing all of that impact and that emotion come out. And it was kind of just like raw emotion, wasn't it? They were all just like, it was almost like, my dad said this and my mum said this. So,
this scene is very emotionally charged, but it's also emotionally charged because of the fact that these children are grieving as well. Like we see in the beginning of the episode, it is the funeral. Laena's children are grieving, but also so are Rhaenyra's. And even though Luke doesn't know that Harwin was his father, he was very close to him, so he's grieving. But they're not allowed to grieve in public, and you can see everybody, even the children, just skirting around that grief. So when Aemon comes in and says that thing about them being bastard, that is such an emotional trigger for them, or at least particularly for Jaceres, that it all kind of bubbles up to the surface. And I think we're seeing almost Alicent and Rhaenyra's conflict come through the children as well. We're seeing that now come alive, and that I thought was really interesting.
So we've talked a lot about, you know, there's the pain, there's the grief, there's a lot of everything has been passed down from generation to generation, and we see that really visibly in the fallout from the ice scene when Rhaenyra and Alicent, they've had their troubles, they've had their pain, and now you see it manifest in the children, and then that becomes the focus of their conflict. They're angry and protective and defensive of their kids. Alicent wants Rhaenyra's child's eye, but at least she's going to let the kid pick which eye, which I thought was quite sweet.
That's nice.
Kind of Alicent for Westeros, you take the kindness where you can get it. But I think we definitely need to break that scene down more, and also what it means for Viserys and what he is thinking now, and how Alicent reacts to that. Oh, there's so much. Where do we start?
What stood out to people the most in that? I keep thinking of it as like a trial scene, because that's how it almost felt like when they're all questioning Aemond. What were the moments that really jumped out to people?
For me, amongst the chaos, was just the fact that poor Viserys has no control. I mean, we've spoken about this in every episode, that he's taken advice left, right, and centre, and he can't make any decisions. But this scene really highlighted that. I mean, really, a crime has been committed, or multiple crimes have been committed here. We've had a prince being maimed, and we've had allegations thrown around, and really, justice should be served. In that's the way it works in this world, and something should happen about it. But he kind of just says, I mean, he's very angry, obviously, but he kind of just says, right, everyone say sorry to each other, and that is it. It's kind of just this chaotic moment.
I didn't actually think what he said and the way he handled it was necessarily bad, because what are we going to do? Let Jacaerys or Luke lose an eye? No, that's never going to happen. Should they have been calling him bastards? No, they shouldn't have happened. Do they need more harmony in the family? Yes. But what I thought was more impactful was the fact that he's made this decision, and he's made to look weak, but because Alicent's like, basically no, if you're not going to do something about it, I'm going to do something about it. And she completely loses composure, she loses her cool, and that makes him look weak, because he can't even quote unquote control his wife. He's supposed to be the king, and she's calling the shots. I think that's what makes his decision making look weaker in that moment, because technically it's his grandchildren, it's his children. He doesn't really want to punish anybody to a certain level. He's very disappointed in them all. He's kind of acting as the elder. Look, we're family, come together, this is how we should do it. But Alicent is just stoking that fire. But what I absolutely love is that her mask has slipped. Her mask has slipped. She said some things that are really revealing, like when she says to Rhaenyra, you basically get everything you want. You basically get to skirt all these consequences. You get to live your life. And here I am trapped, having to live by honour and duty, and you don't have to. And I thought that was so telling, because for now she's always been about, it's the children, I'm going to put them first. He needs to be on the throne. I'm looking out for my kid. It's not about your kids. It's about you. It's about how you feel. It's about how you feel slighted by the fact that you've had little choice in life. And actually, that's Otto's doing, nobody else's. He's forced her into this situation, and she's now sitting in it, and she's bubbling with resentment, and she's taking it all out on Rhaenyra, which is now manifesting through the children. And I just thought that was, yes, we've caught you.
Such a good moment.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
But
Yeah.
also it kind of, as well, like, looking back at earlier in the episode, Rhaenyra said, I think she was talking to Damon, and she said, I don't believe that Alicent would be capable of murder or any sort of crime like that. I don't think she would go that far. And then in this scene, we really see, as you said, Janet, her mask slips. And I think Rhaenyra's kind of like, oh, okay, Alicent is capable of certain stuff. So she's kind of shocked by that reaction.
I do think, like you said, Janet, that moment when Alicent's like, well, if you won't act, I will act. And she grabs the knife, she grabs the cat's paw dagger again, and you see Rhaenyra look at it in the fire, which is a really cool moment. And that interchange where she lunges at Rhaenyra, and Alicent says, we've been trampled under your pretty foot again, and all this stuff. And Rhaenyra comes back with, exhausting, wasn't it? Hiding beneath the cloak of your own righteousness, but now they see you as you are, is such a good line.
Yes!
And obviously, like,
powerful.
And then it happens. Like she stabs Rhaenyra. Like she stabs Rhaenyra in the arm. Blood has been drawn. Like this is it, right? Like from this moment on, everything changes, because up until this point, it's been cloak and dagger. It's been kind of all talk, but this is a moment. Literally, blood is spilt. This show is, David, I think you said last week with the Aegon King's Landing scene, being like, this show does this metaphor is very much on its sleeve, and like this episode was like literally an eye for an eye, and then there's a bit where she draws first blood. It's like, okay, I get it, right? We don't. It's that meme, right? I know writers that you substitute. I don't respect any of them. Like, but it's good. It's a good moment. It's a great end to the scene.
Well, she has made one alliance at least, although it's perhaps one that we found icky/shipped for a long time now. Of course, I am talking about her and Damon again. Things escalate. We are 7 episodes in, and after there was that did they not sex scene a few episodes back, this is very much, they absolutely definitely did all the things, even though they are uncle and niece. So what were our thoughts on how everything built to that moment? Because
they went down to Incest Town, and I feel uncomfortable.
The dragons came home to roost, I think, is what I'm going for.
They made the dragon with 2 backs.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I guess we have 2 big Rhaenyra and Daemon scenes, right? We had an episode where they weren't together really last week, and they had a few glances. And this week we had 2 big moments. We have the beach scene, which actually, if you remember, was one of the first preview images of the show we saw. When HBO were teasing it, we had the set photos of the two characters on the beach. At the time, we didn't even really know that I didn't know they were going to be niece and nephew, niece and uncle. But we saw them on the beach in that image. And so we have that scene, which obviously, and they have the sex scene after they have that kind of conversation about their lives, which I thought was really nice. And then the episode ends with them having that kind of like traditional Valyrian wedding on like a mountaintop, and they've got like the cool ritualistic outfits on. Like, it's a really interesting 2 really interesting scenes. But yeah, that beach scene I thought was really, really tender and really nice. Even before they kind of like have sex, it's this kind of like quite open, honest conversation about like what they mean to each other and what their lives have been like without them. Like Rhaenyra is telling Daemon about what it's like to be married to Laenor, and she's asking him about what his marriage to Laenor was like. It's interesting that they married people who were siblings. Obviously, the whole show is siblingy, but I just thought the parallels there were really interesting. And there's a line in that scene where Rhaenyra says to Daemon, like, "Look at what my life became without you." And it's like a really raw emotional moment between the 2 of them, where she's like, "Why didn't you stick around? Why didn't you fight for me?" And he doesn't really have an answer beyond kind of pride. It was a great scene, and I think for everyone out there, myself now included, who's a big Rhaenyra fan, I'm into it.
It's a classic House of the Dragon scene in the sense that, like, the most healthy and tender and loving sex scene is the one between the most problematic incestuous people of all. So it's at least they're happy. And I there's a noticeable difference, I felt like, in the way Rhaenyra responded to this than she has in any other kind of romantic love scene. Like, it felt very real and authentic. The mask is slipped in a very different way. She's very honest and open with and vulnerable with him in a way that she hasn't been with anyone else. But it's her uncle. I can't ship.
Yeah, there's a scene like later on where she does, like, after they've had sex, and then they're having another discussion, and then she says uncle to him, and I'm like, not after you've done the deed. Like, stop calling him that.
That's so funny.
That's enough. Damon will suffice. His name it'll be okay. I did think the wedding scene was very interesting, not because of who was there, but because of who wasn't there. It's very intimate.
Yes.
But yet Viserys wasn't there. Alicent certainly wasn't there. You're disinvited from everything from now on. Were they in support of this marriage? Is Viserys in support of this marriage? We have no idea.
There's no way he knows,
He hasn't
right?
been up. He hasn't been up until this point. This is what I mean. Like, they couldn't have. They would never do it in secret because they want everybody to know that they are this new power couple that can't be that her reign can't be contested now. That they are a unit. So it would have had to be something that they publicly wanted announced. But the fact that they did it in an intimate way speaks more to the relationship that they had. But also, does it mean that Viserys doesn't know, or does it mean that he disapproves? I mean, he's got no control over anything anyway, so it wouldn't really matter. But
I think it's to do with the fact that, like, there was so much drama the last time they had a family gathering. I wonder, if even if Viserys is there, he might outright forever speak now, forever hold your peace. Viserys is like, very weakly in the background, don't do it. So like, I feel like you're right. I feel like it was very intimate. It was very intimate in the sense that they didn't want any trouble on the day, but they want everyone to know, I think. But it's a shame that, well, I don't know if it's a shame or not, but we're going to have a time jump again. And part of me would love to see their initial reaction. Like, I want to see Alison's face when she finds out. I guess we're not going to, but then it's nice for us to also fill in the blanks in that time jump. So it kind of works either way, I would argue. So, following, Rhaenyra and Daemon had a sort of happy ending on their own, but it was really nice to see Laenor actually had what seems to be, what we hope to be a genuine happy ending, right at the end, when he escapes with his lover, and under the guise of, well, under the dawn, I suppose, but he runs off, he's hiding, everyone thinks he's dead. How do we feel? Because I guess, I'm happy to see him try and get some happiness, given what happened with him and his lover Joffrey a few years, decades, I don't even know at this point. But is this happiness going to last? Is this secret going to last? What do we think?
David, I want to know what you think. You have been the biggest person who cares about gay rep in House of the Dragon that I know. Like,
Me?
This is the end. Yeah, this is the end of the Laenor story. For now, like, where do you stand on this as an end to his arc?
Assuming that this is actually the end of Laenor's story and this is the happy ending, then I am happy to see it. Obviously, there was that whole episode with his lover Joffrey, which ended in a lot of pain and face smushing. In many ways, it fed into the bury your gays trope, where queer characters are only introduced very, very briefly or very one-dimensional just to be killed. That was their function. That's the reason Joffrey kind of existed in this world. So, and Laenor's pain has obviously been the driving force for him now. But yeah, I am happy to see that he can escape. I'm happy for him to live his best life. But I'm just really worried still, because I'm like, what if they're raising our expectations and then he still dies next week? And I want to caveat this with, like, obviously queer characters should not be invulnerable and invincible. Like, they should obviously be dying too. This is a brutal world, but it's the way this show and this franchise has previously approached this. Like I said, that limited screen time or that one-dimensional approach, which if you have lots of queer characters and one dies really brutally, then that's just the way it is. Like, that is Westeros. But it's when you have this one suffering endlessly in a particularly cruel way that was pretty much driven by homophobia, it felt, with Criston Cole. Anyway, I digress. So yes, I am really hoping for some positive vibes moving forward, but we'll see. It's Westeros.
Yeah, I think it was I think you're right. I think it's probably like the best thing we could have wished for Laenor, given everything else that's happened to him. And it was quite sweet. Like, he has that scene, doesn't he, where he comes back to the, all of the stuff has happened. He like swans into Rhaenyra's room and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it." And she's like, "You've missed." And she's like, "Hey, that should be the catchphrase of our family." And I'm like,
I know, I love
Laenor,
that line.
like Laenor, how can you be this late? Like, everything, the things that have happened in the past today, and you just swan in like, oh, bits. I'm just like, get him out. I was so happy.
Disconnected. So disconnected.
I'm just like, yeah. And it's sweet that he was like, "Oh, I'm going to try and be a better dad," and all this. And it's like, it is too little, too late, Laenor. Like, absolute flop. Like, so much is happening around you, and you're just like standing in the sea for a bit at one moment. I'm like,
we started off. You don't like him.
I just think he's a bit rubbish. Like, I feel like
Rhaenyra. He's not the most likable character.
No, he's not.
I'm
he's
with
pickable
you.
though. I feel sorry for him. I do.
No.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, come on. I feel a little bit sorry for him.
I feel like he's lucky that Rhaenyra let him live, and because she could have easily just actually killed him. I think it was only that scene, because he came and was apologising and was like, I'll do better. I think it was maybe that scene that tipped it for her.
I think she genuinely, like she says, she does love him, and I love the fact that they actually found friendship within their relationship. So I think that she would have probably done anything she could have done to spare his life, which is what she did do. I like that she gave him an out. She knew that he wasn't prepared for what was to come. She knew that she couldn't rely on him. The family couldn't rely on him, and she needed better. But she also did it in a way that kind of respects the fact that it's not his fault that he's been placed in the position that he's in, just as it's not her fault that she was placed in the position that she's in. They're both in very, very dutiful roles, and they're not happy. So she's done what she needs to do to be happy, and now she's allowed him some happiness, which was nice.
I do think, although it was nice, I do think it didn't ring particularly true to me. Like, I think the story in which Daemon goes to this guy who's a sellsword and says, like, I'll give you money, you can leave for Braavos, and you can live there happily, like, and he does it, and he kills Laenor, who's just some king. Like, that I thought that would have been quite an interesting take. Obviously, it's difficult because they're like the only queer characters, and so if you have one of them kill the other for money, it's like a slightly weird tone. But in terms of the world of Game of Thrones, that felt to me like a more interesting, truthful exploration of like what their relationship really is that they like each other, but Laenor is like a wealthy benefactor who enables this guy to like have a fun life. And I think the idea of Daemon going to him, Daemon flirting with that guy under the tunnel was extremely hot. And him being
I also love that Daemon does all of his crime with a hood on. Like, whenever he's doing something dodgy, he's got that hood up.
We've been talking about, there's a lot of dark stuff happening in this episode, but it was a very dark episode for other reasons, which a lot of fans have rightly pointed out, especially on that beach. Like, the lighting was ridiculous, and this is quite a big problem, I think, with a lot of TV these days, a lot of prestige dramas. Ozark has been criticised for it in particular, but just the fact that you can't visibly see important stuff happening on screen without having to squint or pulling your laptop nearer or upping the brightness on your TV. I saw a really interesting article earlier this morning that was talking about how this did the actors a disservice. I'm talking specifically about, Rhaenyra and Damon scenes on the beach, because they were really tender, vulnerable, important moments we discussed earlier, but you don't really see their faces. And sure, it's night, that is realistic. At the end of the day, this is a TV show. We are viewers, and we do need to see what's going on. That really shouldn't be a question mark. And I thought it was really interesting because there's been a lot of comparisons recently with House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, and I think this is a very visible visual contrast. I mean, the latest Rings of Power episode did get a lot darker, but in general, like, it's been a very bright, well-lit, magical show, and fans sort of praise that because they were like, we get to see stuff, which is nice for a change. But here, House of Dragon's gone kind of complete opposite in a way that mirrors also an episode as the Game of Thrones Virgin. I believe an episode from season 8 that everyone said, this is too dark, we hate this, and it's happened again.
Yeah, so the context here is that in during season 8 of Game of Thrones, much maligned for lots of reasons, after episode 3 aired, which was the Battle of Winterfell, that's when this really like kicked off. So episode 3 airs, which is like, and has this huge climactic fight scene, and everyone's like, you've got so many extras, so much work has gone into this episode, and none of us can see a single thing. And it blew up to the point that there were interviews with the guy who was the cinematographer on that episode, Fabian Wagner, and he famously, I don't know if you remember this, he basically was like, it's your fault, the TV's a shit. He was like,
all of us.
It's fully what he said was, a lot of here's the direct quote, a lot of the problem is that a lot of people don't know how to tune their TVs properly. A lot of people also, unfortunately, watch it on smaller iPads, which in no way can do a justice to a show like this. So he basically was like, your settings are wrong on your TV, and fix it, and then it'll be better. Which a lot of people are like, why does only your show look like this then? If it was a TV problem, if it was an us problem, then other shows would also have the same issue.
I did not watch it on my iPad. I was ready. I had my covers ready. I had my snacks ready, like non-sounding snacks, the ones that you could just chew. And I had I had my setup ready. Okay, I was ready for the Battle of Winterfell. And the settings on my TV, absolutely fine. And even I was like, I cannot see a thing. I had to turn on lights, shut lights. I tried all sorts of manners of things. It was still an epic fight scene. It's a shame I only saw 50% of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, us as a collective all being very big film and TV nerds, I feel like most of us are not going to have the blur settings on our TV. I mean, look at the size of my TV. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But, and if we were struggling, and I mean, Ali, you mentioned before with Aemond on the beach, and like, we were kind of confused as to, is he sneaking up on Rhaenyra and Daemon, or is he going to the dragon? We couldn't see what was going on. Yeah. So it is an important thing. I appreciate that it was a nighttime scene, so of course it had to be dark, but you do want to see those moments. And like you guys said, like, you don't want it to miss out on the performances, because that sex scene was a great scene, a really tender moment, and it would have been great to see more of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think,
even though it's incest, we still wanted to see more.
Yeah. We want the details.
I'm okay with seeing a little bit less. I'm okay with just.
So that's all the biggest things we need to talk about this week. So let us know what you thought about everything we raised, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to come back next week for House of the Dragon episode 8.
Woo.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.